All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Black Hawk Technical College. We've been going over the book iOS 9 App Development Essentials, and I've been going over the first 17 chapters, of which I've got the first 8 completed. So we just finished going over the flow control, and now I'm going to jump into chapter 9, which is similar, which talks about the switch statement. Now the syntax has not changed much, except for the fact that you'll notice you no longer need a break statement. It doesn't fall through. If you want it to fall through, you actually use what's called a fall-through statement. We'll see that in just a minute. All right, there's also, it's a little bit nicer the way that you can write a case now because it's a little more powerful than it used to be. Rather than going over the stuff in the book, as I have been doing, what I'd like to do is come in here and do yet another File, New, Playground page, and we'll call this one Switch Statement Examples, or yeah, that'd be fine. Switch Statement Examples. Okay, so there's that one. As always, we'll import our UI kit. All right, so as we come through here, I'll use examples that are at least similar to the examples that they have in the book. All right, so let's suppose that we have the user, we want them to enter a number, and that number would be either a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. Okay, so we'll say in here, let's let value equal, for now we'll make it 0. Okay, you'll see why in a second. Now we're going to switch on that value. I think we still need the parens here. And now we can come in and put in our curlies. So case 1. Let's move this over a tad so it looks a little nicer. Print, you are a freshman. Case 2, and you'll notice it didn't print anything yet because value is not a 1. It's also not a 2 where we're going to print you are a sophomore. I think that's spelled right. All right. Case 3, I don't know why it keeps moving it over like that, but it is. Print, you are a junior. Case 4, still is doing that, I don't know why. Print, you are a senior. Default, which is actually the one in this example that's going to print, we'll just say here, class year is unknown. All right. And what should print out there eventually is class year is unknown, and that's what prints because value is 0. You'll notice if I set it to 1, it changes to you are a freshman. If I change it to 2, it changes to you are a sophomore. If I change it to 3, it comes out you are a junior. And if I change it to 4, it comes out you are a senior. So that's all fine. All right. Well, what if I didn't want to do this? What I wanted to say was if it was a 1 or a 2, we wanted to print out you're an underclassman. If it was a 3 or a 4, we wanted to print out you're an upperclassman. So we could say here case 1, comma 2, and we'll change all this around, so don't worry about it. So, all right, so if that's the case, print out you are an underclassman. classmen. Notice it still prints out you are a senior because that's what we've set the value to. So let's change this to 3, comma, 4. And now we're going to print out here you are an upper classman. All right. And notice it prints out you are an upperclassman, which is correct. But if I change that to a 3, it should remain you are an upperclassman. But if I put that in as a 1 or a 2, it should say now you are an underclassman. Sorry about that. Okay, and if I have it anything other than a 1, 2, 3, or 4, it should say class year is unknown. Okay, so all that works. We can also put ranges in here. All right, so let's change this from value. We're going to get an error, but don't worry. We'll change that to temp. I'm going to use one that's similar to what's in the book. All right. So I'm going to say let's say, for example, this isn't a great example, but we'll use it anyway. Case negative, I don't think the temperature would ever get less than negative 30, dot, dot, less than, so while it's less than, 45. Okay, print it is cold. In fact, let's not even use the less than here. Let's just make dot, 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 45. All right, so case negative 30 to that, print out it is cold. Okay, so we'll change this to case 46 dot, dot, let's say 70, dot, 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 70. Case it is comfortable. And the default, which will mean greater than 70, and I don't even like that. So let's say, let's just make another case in here. Come on there. Let's say case 71 dot, 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 125, and it shouldn't be any hotter than that. We'll say in that case, no pun intended, print it is hot. All right, and the default will just say unknown temp. All right, so what doesn't it like here? I think it's because I've got a space there. All right, there we go. Temperature is 0, so it says it's cold. We should always check the extremes here. So if we did put in a number here that was less than negative 30, it's going to print down unknown temp. And if we put in a value that's greater than 125, it's going to put in unknown temp. All right, so I've checked negative 30 and it said it's cold. If I say 45 in here, it should also say it's cold. But if I move that up from 45 to 46, it should change it to it is comfortable. And you can see it does. And I can check all the way till 70. And it still says it's comfortable. But as soon as I bump it up to 71, it comes in and says it's hot. Now you could, we could have said cold, warm like they did in the book, but you get the idea. All right. I don't like the examples that they give in the book, but let's try this. Instead of temp, we're going to just change this to number. I think this is going to be a goofy example, but I think you're going to see it anyway. All right, you'll understand hopefully when we get done with it. So I'm going to switch on number. All right, I'm going to remove all of these cases in here, and I'm going to say case 0. You'll understand hopefully why in just a second I'm doing this. And I'm going to print 0 is neither odd nor even. Okay? Case where number modulo 2 equal 0. Print the number, and we'll actually print out the number, is even, and we'll grab all this stuff down here for the default. We'll just print out that it's odd. Now, it may not like the syntax I'm using here, so we're going to check on that in just a minute. Say there that it's odd. So it wants a range in here, so it doesn't like what I'm trying to do. I thought I could, expecting a pattern, and it's not finding one. So let's say in here, negative 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, dot, 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 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I can enter a number between 1 and a million. Okay, notice 0 is neither odd nor even. If I put in here 367, comes down and it says 367 is odd, which is true. If I come in here and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, should say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is even, so it does. The idea, what I'm trying to get across to you here is this is much more like a Visual Basic.NET switch statement now than it used to be, because you can put ranges in here and you can put a bunch of other stuff in here also. All right, now the last thing I'm going to show you, because we're to the end of the chapter, I wouldn't do this, but just to show you that you can, I'm going to put in here fall through. And I'll put it here. And we don't need one, of course, for the default. All right, notice now when I did that, it did print out that it's even, but it also did the fall through and it printed out that it was odd. That doesn't make any sense, but the idea is if you do want it to fall through, you now have to use the keyword fall through. Now, I don't want that to happen, but I just wanted you to see it and see what happens when you do this. All right, and that pretty much is the material that's in Chapter 9. Again, my examples weren't the same as the ones that were in the book, but they're similar. Now in Chapter 10, the book changes a little bit, because really starting in Chapter 10, it's becoming more Swift programming language specific. So we'll talk about functions, methods, and closures. I'll use a bunch of their examples and maybe some of my own. Then in Chapter 11, we'll go through the object-oriented programming in Swift. And then we'll look at Swift subclassing and extensions. And I like the examples pretty much that they use in there, so we'll use most of them. Then we'll look at working with arrays and dictionaries. From there, we'll go to error handling. From there, we'll go to the iOS application development architecture. And from there, we'll go to creating an interactive iOS app where we'll actually create the app. All right. Finally, we'll end up this section here with understanding iOS 9 views, windows, and the view hierarchy. All right. That'll get us through the first 17 chapters. Then chapters 18 through about 24, I think. That talks about working with auto layout. All right, so we'll go through that and chapter 25 and 26, which is organizing scenes, working with storyboards and organizing scenes over multiple storyboards. The only thing I do want to mention, this is kind of a weird place to talk about it now, but it'll be fine, is my plan right now is for us in our classroom is to go over the first 50 chapters of the book. And I should move that up a little faster than this. So right now, we've gone over Chapter 1, Start Here, Chapter 2, Joining the Apple Developer Program, Chapter 3, Installing Xcode and iOS 9 SDK, Chapter 4, A Guided Tour of Xcode 7, Chapter 5, Playgrounds, Chapter 6, Data Types, Constants, and Variables, Chapter 7, Operators and Expressions, Chapter 8, Flow Control, and Chapter 9, the Swift switch statement. All right. From here, we're going to go on to Chapter 10, Functions, Methods, and Closures. Chapter 11, The Basics of Object-Oriented Programming in Swift. Chapter 12, An Intro to Swift Subclassing and Extensions. Chapter 13, Working with Array and Dictionary Collections in Swift. Chapter 14, Understanding Error Handling in Swift. Chapter 15, The iOS 9 Application and Development Architecture. Chapter 16, where we actually create a simple app. Chapter 17, which goes over the view, window, and view hierarchy. That'll get us to around page 103. All right. And then Chapter 18 is on auto layout, as is Chapter 19, as is Chapter 20, as is Chapter 21, as is Chapter 22, as is Chapter 23, and really it even goes into Chapter 24. So we'll go over those 4 chapters as a class. That'll get us into storyboards and multiple storyboard files. And then you'll notice we'll start talking about the different types of applications that you can create in Swift. We'll go into a tab bar, then a table view, more on table views, more on table views, a stack view, more on stack views, a master detail, talk about multitasking, the UI page view controller, working with directories and files, more on directories and files, and then we'll quickly go through a little bit on iCloud storage, then the document class, more on iCloud storage, more on iCloud. All right, then talking a little bit about database with SQLite, more on SQLite, and then we'll finally get into core data, which is really important stuff. All right, so we'll go through how to work with databases using core data and a core data tutorial, and then an intro to Cloud Kit data storage. But my goal is to probably go through about the first 48 chapters, maybe the first 50, I don't know. All right, but then when we go in, what we're going to do, I'll explain this in class. All right, but we will, in a way, we're going to go over all the material in the book, but in a way, we're going to stop right there. And I'll leave that as a teaser for you. We'll talk about that later in class. Okay, so that finishes up Chapter 9.